Co Health acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and waterways on which our offices stand, the Bunurong, Wurundjeri and Wathawarong people, and pays respects to elders past, present and emerging. We acknowledge the stolen generations and the historical and ongoing impact of colonisation on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. We also recognise the resilience, strength and pride of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's living culture is the oldest continuing culture in the world, and we acknowledge that the land and waterways are a place of age-old ceremonies, of celebration, initiation and renewal.
The kind of boxes that I'm put into as a woman of colour, I end up often having to, wear an urban label when my music doesn't necessarily always fit into that kind of label.
When I migrated to Australia, the first barrier that I experienced was lack of services and organizations supporting multicultural music. It basically meant that I did not have space to express myself and express the music that I've learned years and years back in my country.
The biggest one has been opportunity and accessibility. Because of our challenges that we have to deal with. As mentioned, I've vision impaired, live with Asperger's syndrome and epilepsy. And so that can be very limiting.
The hardest thing, I think, finding a good manager in this place, and you take on all these different advice, but it's trying to find someone that is going to work for you and work alongside you and represent you the way that you want to be represented.
Just because we look so awkward and cumbersome getting up on the stage, they just assume, or their expectations of our music are very low.
Those preconceived ideas is possibly the biggest challenge we've had to overcome and still have to overcome.
More acceptance. There have to be more acceptance to allow them to come to us and see us. And I think it'll be a much happier world.
By having a more inclusive music industry, it'll bring so much light and education to identities other than your own. And I think this is so important to live in the world we do today. You need to be educated and you need to know that at the end of the day, we've all got red blood.
The sharing of culture and knowledge and history leads to new works, it leads to collaboration, new knowledge, new skills, opens you up to new audiences, and that grows the industry and it enriches the tapestry.
An inclusive music industry gives us a much wider and richer array of perspectives, musical ideas, aesthetics, and conversations. An inclusive music industry is a must to tell both rich and accurate stories about a time and a place in music.
There's some beautiful songs the world's missing out on, and given that our unique experience and the songs we've written together because of that experience, we can't be we know we're not the only ones out there, and I just feel the world's missing out on some really great music.
We're shifting towards a more creative scene where artists have more control over their music. It's now easier for independent artists to release their music by themselves across lots of different platforms without having a major label backing them. Music Victoria do a fantastic job in advocating and championing the rights of people involved in the music industry.
There's also been so much support from organisations such as APRA AMCOS that offers so many programs and opportunities to music makers, songwriters and music engineers.
The other thing that's working really well in Melbourne obviously is community radio, and without community radio we would have a gaping hole in our industry.
The music scene, especially in Melbourne, it's very open to diverse music from all around the world.
People are actually doing their homework and finding what's new and what's out there. I think that that's really working. Giving other people, other Indigenous artists back in remote communities that hope or that, inspiration to know that there's work out there and that it's possible to be programmed and headlined at, some of these festivals. the women that have come before me, the songwriters and the women that have stepped in, made the road a little bit easier for us. People like Ruby Hunter, Titters, other Aboriginal women that have, come before us. So that's always made me feel confident to tell my story and tell it how I want to tell it.
You know what helps me to feel free and safe to express myself as an artist? I can write any lyrics I want without risk of being publicly shamed or treated like a criminal.
For me, it's about knowing that the ideas and opinions that I have to share are wanted and will be supported and respected once I have shared them.
Artists and organisers feeling safe to take risks and express themselves is really important for both new sounds to emerge in a scene as well as values to progress with the times. If people don't feel comfortable taking risks or pushing boundaries or expressing themselves, then things can grow stagnant very quickly.
You voice your opinions. It's good to share people's stories, and it's good to share your stories so they can come and relate to you and say, oh, I've been what you're going through. I know, I feel your pain and all that. And so maybe they can start collaborating with you.
People feeling like they are safe to attend gigs, women in particular, and for people of colour to feel like they are welcomed into some venues that may have previously been intimidating or unwelcoming to them.
The voices I want to see amplified the most are the voices that really aren't being represented enough right now. In my opinion, some of those include the voices of Black artists, the voices of Indigenous artists, the voices of disabled artists, and the voices of transgender artists.
I would like to see, a whole lot more young Aboriginal women, coming through, and there is, but I'd like to see them there, amongst each other.
I would like to hear more from migrants and refugee community music. They have less access to music opportunities in their community, and that's because of the societal structures and power imbalances.
I would so love for more queer voices to be heard in the music industry. There is absolutely not enough education about these amazing people, more specifically gender diverse people, and I think us as a whole need to educate ourselves on this topic because they go through so much and they have such amazing stories.
We know how important representation is, and it's not just important for people within those cultures, it's for people outside it as well. It creates a bridge of, curiosity so that we can connect with each other and exchange cultures and see and hear the different types of stories that we all have to offer.
I want to see representation that better reflects the cultural and racial diversity of Australia's contemporary music landscape. And I want to see this representation at all levels. Artists, bookers, venue managers, agents, organisers. I want it to be reflective and not just on lineups, but all the way behind the scenes too.
I want to see more original content. I want to see truly authentic pieces of work that inspire not just your audience but inspire other artists. I want that exciting, contagious feeling that you get when you see something that you can't compare it to anything else that you've seen.
Also for aspiring artists like me who live with disabilities to have their music heard and their stories told around the world.
It's almost sad that we have to have this conversation because there are so many amazing people out there that just don't get these opportunities like they should. And sometimes these people can create and be the ones who do make the most phenomenal music.
It's really good to see and hear more of having consultations with migrants and refugee background musicians, because we need to give them a voice. We need to involve them in decision making. They know better what they want and what support they need to be able to express themselves and create music or art.
I want to keep seeing more recognition around independent artists and music makers, and more support around people like myself that are doing everything themselves: recording, writing, promoting, producing, marketing themselves. More support around everyone that's starting up as a musician.
Music in this state is a huge industry. So I think there needs to be better state and federal support to make sure that the people who are supplying the art are looked after.
I would like to see more musicians playing at more pubs locally, and more opportunities to collaborate with different artists, and less favoritism, I reckon.
There's a difference between criticism and being rude. Criticism can be very helpful, but being blatantly rude to one another is just not necessary. And I think if we can combat this together, it'll become a more inclusive environment as well.
More collaborations between black and white artists and hearing more of our languages out there. I'd like to hear more non-Indigenous mobs celebrate our languages through songs, and also celebrate our songs and our anthems, to the songbook, the Australian songbook.
Access all areas.
For all.
For me.
For you.
For us.
Access All Areas is a collaboration of music industry, local government and community, LGBTQIA+, and women's health stakeholders to advance opportunities for safety, gender equity and diversity in music industry settings in Melbourne's metropolitan north and west. Access All Areas recognises and seeks to shed light on the ways gendered violence and underrepresentation is shaped by structures such as colonisation, racism, ableism and more to impact particular groups in unique and compounding ways. Access All Areas centres the needs of groups most impacted and aims to amplify their voices in working towards cultural and structural change in music industry settings.